This is Tyler with TJack Survival and Survival Dispatch. I got a question for Jason. If I put my cowboy hat on and I put my cowboy boots on, does that mean that I'm ranch dressing? Okay, we're gonna talk about traps. Clearly you can bring out wire traps and those type of things with you, but what do you do if you don't have wire or you didn't bring traps with you? Well, you make them. I've got a little bag full of some traps that I've made in the past so I don't have to spend all day making traps, but we're gonna show you how to do a whole bunch of traps today, so stick with me. Oh, that's a good one. I look everywhere for a flat rock. I sit down for a few seconds and there it is. Okay. And see the special seat rock, perfectly carved for my butt. All right, I'm all about gear. I like bringing gear. I'm all about having gear in advance, but I don't always have the gear I need, so I'm more interested in getting the skill set so that if I don't have my wazoo belt with a wire in it or a hat or some sort of kit, I can still do that. And the way that I'm gonna do that today is, and for these next few videos, is a series of traps. The first thing that you need is string. Now, you can take the bottom of your shirt and reverse wrap it. You can take a ton of different fibers in the environment and create string. And in fact, I'm looking at one right here. That was lucky. Okay, so let's talk about fibers and string first, because we're gonna need the fibers and the string in order to create the traps. So there's a ton of plants that have fibers that you can make string out of. I've experimented with a bunch. I'll list a few that I know that work, but ultimately you need to get out and just see a plant with some fibers on it, rip the fibers out and see if you can make a rope out of it. You don't need your rope to be about that long. In fact, there's a dog bane rope I've got around my wrist that I made earlier. This is the cambium layer of, I think, cottonwood, some sticks laying right there. It's a great nesting material, but I'm gonna try to make a rope out of it super quick so you guys can see what's going on with that. And all I'm gonna do is just take this fiber, let me get this second camera going. All I'm gonna do is just take this fiber and reverse wrap it. There's a ton of videos on how to do this, so I don't get in too much depth, but I'm gonna take my right hand and I'm gonna twist away. This is too much fiber, let's cut that down a little bit. And before I get cruising along at this, get a little bit wet, not too wet because it'll shrink, but get a little bit wet and it'll help it stick. So right hand is twisting away, and I continue to twist until it kind of bunches up and makes that little ball. Now what I will do is twist the right hand away and then pull the top one towards me. So they switch places. Twist the right hand away, top towards, away towards, away towards, away towards. And then as we keep cruising along with that, straighten this guy out. Away towards, away towards. I'm gonna eventually start making rope. And I did that in 30, 40 seconds with some crap laying on the ground right here. Let's finish this guy real quick. And by crap, I mean the cambium layer of some cottonwood that has fallen. This is, again, excellent nesting material. This is usually what I use to start fires with, but it's laying there, so we'll just use it and show you how you can make some rope really quick. So now I've got a little chunk of rope, a little ugly looking, but it works. If I want to continue to make more rope, I just add some more of that cambium layer into the rope making process. Just gonna smash it in there. I leave a little bit of a tail. Start twisting. You can fold that tail over and continue to twist if you want. And then there's one more leg. And then I want to extend this other leg. And I'll start twisting away until it's nice and tight. Fold the leg over, away towards. And I'll just railroad right over that additive bump in my rope. And I just keep feeding this until I get a rope that I want. Now, if I really want a super strong rope, I'll make one of these like 6 feet long, and then I will fold it over and go the opposite direction, towards away. And that will be a double wrapped cordage or a double wrapped piece of rope. Now, this is some ugly rope. It's not the ideal material, but I'm gonna roll with it because it's what's laying on the ground, and it just shows that you can walk out into nature, grab fibers, and start making stuff. Not super complicated. Right there is my rope. And I probably need another 6 inches on this before I can make a Paiute Deadfall. This is some super thick rope, so it's not great, but it will work. And the reason I did this thick is that I know this material from experience breaks easy. So I know I'm gonna have to make a bigger rope than I would if I had something like dogbane. Okay, so we know how to make the cordage. Let's talk about the fibers we're gonna look for. I've successfully in the past made traps out of fibers from primrose, cattail. Most of the time I'm using dogbane. This is a chunk of dogbane, and this is some completed cordage from the dogbane. Let's think what else we're using. Sagebrush will work, juniper bark will work, cattail works. Basically any plant fiber in nature, yucca works really well. Probably my two preferred choices are yucca and dogbane. But if you don't have that, find something that works. I know there's certain cedar barks that will work. Just anything with the fiber. Hair works. If you've got a dog and you want to shave some hair, or a horse and you want to pull their tail hair out, they used to make lassos, and they used to make the belly bands for horse saddles out of horse hair. They would just trim the tail off the horse and make its own belly band out of the horse hair. They would reverse wrap big strings and then just bind them together under the belly band for the saddle and put them together that way. So any fiber in nature will work. Let's talk quickly about how to make cordage out of dogbane, since it's one of my favorites. Right here, I have dogbane on my wrist. It's just one strand of dogbane. And right here we have a stick. I'll show you some footage of dogbane. It's square in the stem. It will throw off a branch to the left and the right, and then 90-degree angle above it, it'll throw off another branch to the left and the right. When you break the green stuff, it's super milky. Don't use the green stuff because it shrinks, but you can use it if you want. It is a lot like mint family or nettle family, like stinging nettle, in the way that it grows and the way that it's shaped. It doesn't sting you though. The nettle family also, now that I'm thinking about it, mint and stinging nettle makes great cordage as well. So a lot of people will have cattail, stinging nettle, dogbane, yucca, at least one of those 4 things in your area almost anywhere you go. Okay, so we're gonna make some cordage really super quick out of this guy right here. Got a little flat rock, and I'm just gonna smash it. You don't have to use a hatchet, I just happen to have one with me. When these fall on the ground, they'll kind of lay naturally at a square, and you can kind of see how this is square shaped. I want to crush it in the same way that I'm taking a box. Let me think of this. In the same way that I'm taking a box and crushing it over, okay? So I'm just gonna smash that box over. This is a very large chunk of this stuff. And it's gonna break naturally along some lines. You just want to make sure you follow those lines, so that when you split it, you'll get the full fiber from the base to the top. And if you really want it to be super pretty, take your knife and scrape the back side of it off. You'll get rid of this waxy substance on the top of it that I like to call the peanut shell, because it looks a lot like the shell of a peanut. If you can kind of see right there, that peanut shell stuff will come off. But you're only gonna do that if you wanna make fishing line, something super important. So this splits into 4 pieces. I'm gonna run my finger between the 2, and it's kind of twisted, which is fine. Not every plant grows perfectly straight. Here's one set of it. Here's another set. Now this is a big, thick chunk of dogbane, so I can make all the string I need out of 1/4. I don't need all this other stuff. I will come back to that later. And all that I'm gonna do is fold this over. That is really strong. And break it off. So I'll pull it and break it, pull it and break it. And the reason that I'm going both directions is that I'm pulling fibers from here, then as I break it, I want to keep the fibers there. I don't want to lose those fibers because that's what I'm after. So that's why I will pull it off one side and break it off the other side. And this technique allows me to process this kind of fast because I don't want to be sitting here all day long making rope. Got animals to catch and things to eat. See right there's a good example of why you break it both directions so you can keep those fibers. Once I've got it, sometimes I like to spit a little spit on my hands or water so that I can rub this thin waxy layer off. Another thing you can do is just bundle it up. Just rub it between your hands. You see all that dust coming off? That is that waxy layer I want to remove. Now this is the fiber that I was after. Now we're going to take this and we're just going to do a quick reverse wrap rope. I'm going to pull this apart, so I only need one of those. Same way that we did with the other stuff. I'm going to go away until it bundles up, starts to twist by itself. Once I get that little twist right there, then I go away towards, away towards. Now, because this is the old school time-consuming way to make rope, I am actually going to roll this down my leg because it's way faster. So in order to make that work, I'm going to get that kind of wettish, roll all that tight, roll that one tight, and then as I roll it tight, it'll go like that. That's like 5 minutes of away towards that I can do in a few seconds. Losing some of my fibers, I'm just going to push them right back in the system here. Get that tight. You got to kind of lick your hands if it's cold this morning, kind of dry, so if I don't get some stickiness into my hands, it's not going to work. And then to terminate this, I can either add more fiber to it or I'll just tighten it a quick knot. And that knot can be used on the opposite loop end to hold it. Okay, there's some quick rope, super quick rope. That is one strand. And this is all I need for a Paiute Deadfall or a figure 4 or a Y-bone or whatever it is that I'm gonna make. So let's start talking about the actual creation of the traps. So we've got the string made, we figured out how to make the string. Let's talk about the actual application of setting the trap up itself. Now you need a flat rock, all right? This is a flat surface that's a little smaller than what I want. It'd probably work great for mice, but the golden grail of this little stuff is, the holy grail of this little stuff is like a squirrel, right? One full tree squirrel is a meal. If you can get one of those a day as you travel, then you're eating a full red meat meal every single day, and that's awesome. Mice are food, but like they're more like a snack. There's not a lot of meat on them. So ideally you try to put 2 flat surfaces, one on top of the other. And this one will kind of work. I use this bigger one, it's gonna work a little better. So you put 2 flat surfaces so they clap together. One way to do that, if you have a saw, is just cut a ring of wood off of the end of a log and then cut another ring of wood and then stack them and they'll clap together. Put dirt in my face. So they'll clap together. If you don't have a saw, then use two rocks. This rock right here, I'm just gonna put straight on the flat surface. I could dig a hole and put that one on the bottom so they clap together. For now, I'm just gonna try to do it on this flat-ish surface and see how she works out. So there's a couple variations of the Paiute Deadfall. The other day I made some of these, and I'm gonna show you the close-up components so that you can make them. You don't need to sit here and watch me make a new one because it just takes a lot of unnecessary time. For this one, we're gonna do a simple Paiute Deadfall. It's kind of the gold standard of where all these other ones come from. So we'll start with the basic and then go from there. Now, I don't have a trigger stick. I don't tend to make those until I get in the field because I can't guarantee the size of the rock, and the size of the rock will change the length of the trigger stick. So I'll just make them when you get there. Plus, this is crazy, I know, but there's a lot of sticks in the forest, so I should be okay. So, but the way this is essentially gonna work is I get a nice flat surface. You don't want too much of a divot, otherwise the animals will either jump out or wiggle out and not actually get crushed. And the goal is to smash them so that you can eat them. Put that right there like that. And then sometimes you're gonna need to push a rock down in like this so that you've got a way for that to jump off, right? So let's make a trigger stick real quick. Try to use a dry trigger stick if you can, because it's going to be a little more rigid, and there is a decent amount of pressure on this. If you do it right though, if you make it strong enough, you can actually set a Paiute Deadfall up on a straw. So there was legends about Native Americans setting up Paiute Deadfalls with just a blade of grass, and it was really just a piece of straw that they were wedging down in there, or straw is basically grass. So see how well this dude's gonna set up. The one thing I don't like about the Paiute Deadfall specifically is it has a tendency to twist. When it gets that downward pressure, that twisting action messes with stuff. And you kind of want to set this up with a triangle-shaped rock, because that triangle-shaped rock won't lean, right? And the lean is what's going to jack you up. There we go. Setting those up can be a real pain in the butt. This one, for some reason, is twisting hard to the side. But what we're looking for is this, and I'm going to show you the components and how to deal with them from this perspective. You have a flat surface on the top of your top stick. You got something that has a natural bend in that top stick, and you're going to cut a V in the top of that, and then you're going to cut a notch in the back of it. That's where you're going to wrap your primitive cordage, and I've wrapped this with a clove hitch. The reason I use a clove hitch is because any overhead knots create stress on natural cordage that will break the string, but a clove hitch is just friction, and it ends up gripping it a little bit better. That string goes down and goes around the front of your vertical stick. Your vertical stick is just a minus screwdriver top, okay, a wedge that's going to go into the V of this top piece, and then it's straight. The bottom right there is going to be cut around the edges and flat so that it can get some friction. And I stuck this on top of a rock so that it's not going to get stuck, and when this dude falls, we don't want it being stopped on top of this vertical stick. That's why the vertical stick is outside of the fall path of the rock. This little paddle, you can see how I cut that. I put a notch in the middle of the paddle so that the string won't slide, and I put these little holes right here so that the trigger stick can go inside of those holes and kind of grip it. The negative to me when it comes to the Paiute Deadfall is the torsion that's put on this, or the twisting action. As you can see from the top, it kind of twists it to the side, which is totally fine because it'll still work. So let's see how this guy works in action. There's a combination of ways that you can deal with the bait. You got to have bait. You can't just set this up and expect an animal to wander into it. Peanut butter works good. Jerky works good. Squirrels love peanut butter. I love peanut butter. I get where they're coming from. So you can do a combination of a few things. You can either skewer the meat with the trigger stick, which doesn't always work because they'll get up there and they'll nibble on it, and they won't oftentimes trigger the stick. I've put game cameras on this and seen them, especially mice. They'll bite on that and they'll eat the whole thing and they won't trigger and drop it. Another good thing you can do is put your trigger sticks here, put a dirt hole, and put bait in one side and in the other. What they'll do is they'll crawl over that stick to get to the other side of the bait, and that's the goal. When they push that down, that's what triggers it. So I would put some bait right here in a hole, and I would put some bait, don't trigger it, right there in a hole. And then what's going to end up happening, the little mouse comes and eats some stuff in there, and it sees more food and it crawls over here to eat the stuff in that second hole. That act of crawling pushes the stick down. Wow, that's too strong. And it doesn't work. Let me get myself a more rigid stick. Some dry and hard. That'll work. Okay, so if I put a little bait here, the mouse is eating some food here, and they try to crawl over the other stick and they go to eat the food on the other side, and when that happens, they push that down and it gets them smashed. And as you can see, because that vertical stick was not only outside of the fall path of the rock, and it was on a nice slick bottom rock, it flipped everything out of the road and it moved the entire kit outside of the fall path. What we don't want to do is to wedge it in the dirt or to put it too close to the inside. When you see people doing that, you know they're not catching anything, okay? So make sure that the bottom is slick enough, and the way that I do that too is I will cut it flat and then cut these edges around the outside so that it will actually flip out on this slick rock, and that way you can actually guarantee that the Paiute Deadfall functions appropriately. Okay, that set the standard for future traps that I'm going to talk about in the next few videos. A little quick history on that, if I remember this correctly. They found these little paddles in pack rat dung and in traps that were up in the cliffs in southern Utah, and they were trying to figure out what they were for. When they ended up finding these complete pieces, they realized it was part of a trap, and they had to actually use reconstructive experimental archaeology to figure out how this was a trap. Eventually, I think it was Larry Olson, or it might have been George Machout. I'm not 100% sure, don't quote me on that. But eventually they were able to figure out that this is the trap and the way that it's built, and then they had the trigger stick that was added to it. Part of that was based on legends from the 1800s of the Native Americans being able to set up a trap that was so sensitive that it used a piece of straw. Okay, that's the Paiute Deadfall, the gold standard. Hopefully that was valuable to you. If you've got a cool trap, tell me the name of it down on the bottom. I'll either look it up, or if I already know it, we can teach people. Or if you've got ideas on ways to improve this system, let everybody know. And thank you for watching.